Vicar gazed at the girl who lay in the cage, tears streaming down her face. From the bruises and injury marks on her body, it was apparent that she had been tormented before being brought here. With a disapproving click of his tongue, Vicar took out a potion from his pack and said that the girl was fortunate enough to receive it. It was a potion he had obtained from the Night Order, which they had given him out of the goodness of his heart. Vicar then poured the potion into the barbarian girl's mouth, and its effects could be seen immediately as the bruises and injury marks on her body began to heal visibly, right before his eyes. Suddenly, the girl's eyes fluttered open, but she recoiled in fear when she saw Vicar standing before her. Perplexed, Vicar asked why she was so surprised, but the girl just looked at him questioningly. Without a word, Vicar rose to his feet and unlocked the cage door. In the barbarian language, he ordered the girl to go. The girl appeared to understand what Vicar was trying to convey, but still looked at him with confusion. Vicar thought about how he had learned some of the basics of the barbarian language during his fights against them before his regression. Pointing towards the exit, Vicar spoke again in the barbarian language, this time instructing the girl to run away. In response, the girl spoke something in her native tongue, but Vicar was unable to comprehend it. He admitted to the girl that he wasn't very fluent in the barbarian language. Just before departing, the barbarian girl looked back and said something to Vicar in her native language, and even though he couldn't understand her words, Vicar concluded that she was probably thanking him. Vicar then took out another cloth, revealing the reason he had come to the storage area. As Vicar stood with the cloth in his hand, he looked at what he had been searching for, Merciel's corpse. He approached the corpse and examined it closely, relieved to find that it was still intact. Suddenly, Vicar's hand began to emit a red aura, and Beelzebub emerged from it. With a grin on his face, Vicar told Beelzebub that it had been a while since Beelzebub had feasted on an Arank monster, but it would be allowed to eat it soon. He reminded Beelzebub that the Pitbull order was due to arrive shortly, and therefore it needed to finish its meal quickly. In response, Beelzebub made a pleased noise, expressing gratitude to Vicar for this incredible feast. The news of the new deputy consul's actions against the criminal organization spread like wildfire. As the sun rose, rumors circulated that the nobles and others involved in the illegal slave auction were now prisoners in the Underdog City prison with their limbs torn off. The den of the large demon in Underdog City, Burning Suspension, burned down and vanished completely. The heads of the club's VIPs were put on display, creating more awareness of criminal activities. The 7 original clans, who lost their children, sent written protests to the administrative office, but Vicar's reply was firm. He stated that the death penalty was the only punishment for those involved in the imperial family's most forbidden act of illegal slave trading. Bank drafts, ledger books, and information about the criminals' cash transactions were all taken into custody. The Baskerville clan was currently investigating the incident, and was going to report its findings to the imperial family. After hearing that, the written protests from the 7 families eventually came to a halt. The patriarchs of each of the 7 families personally came to the administrative office, marking an unprecedented situation where they had to plead with their enemy who had killed their sons. Vicar's response was simple. The black ledgers that were inside Burning Suspension had already been investigated. In accordance with the Baskerville self-governing dominion, the 7 families' assets would be confiscated, and, on the charge of treason, 3 generations would be destroyed. Due to the new deputy consul being appointed, the floors of the execution ground were filled with the dirty blood of the city's corrupt vermin. As a result of this, public officials and related subcontractors needed manpower, which led to a decrease in unemployment rates in the Underdog City. The collapse of the illegal underground auction led to a surge in tax revenue, and the welfare of the Underdog City was restored. Vicar's stock price increased daily because of the citizens of the Underdog City. Chihuahua stood holding a coffee cup as he approached Vicar, the consul, and said that he had brought coffee. Vicar responded by telling Chihuahua that he didn't need to bring him coffee since he was the office manager. However, Chihuahua insisted that it was his way of thanking Vicar for saving him from a potential stabbing by the clown during the slave auctions. Vicar smiled and joked that Chihuahua was being stingy by giving him coffee in exchange for saving his life. Chihuahua responded by explaining that he had put 2 spoons of sugar, creamer, and a little bit of water in the coffee. Chihuahua then changed the topic and asked about Vicar's transcribing training. Vicar handed over a paper sheet and asked Chihuahua to take a look at it for him. Chihuahua was surprised at how good Vicar's writing was despite not having learned how to write for very long. Vicar humbly stated that he still had a lot to learn and praised Chihuahua's abilities as the office manager. Chihuahua thought to himself that Vicar was an amazing person, having the ability to create new laws and comprehend knowledge of the law. He believed that if the deputy consul stayed in the city, Underdog City would be able to develop even more. In the middle of the night, the sky was filled with clouds, and some moonlight rays escaped and fell into a prison cell. Vicar was standing in the cell, facing a prisoner who was none other than Cindy Windy, Baron Gambino's attendant whom Vicar had saved previously in the slave auctions. Cindy Windy had handcuffs on her hands and a blindfold covering her eyes. Vicar apologized for not being able to visit her sooner, and explained that he had been busy with other matters. He asked her a question to confirm that her name was Cindy Windy Senrose, but she didn't answer his question and instead asked why he had let her live. Vicar removed the blindfold covering her eyes and replied that reason he had saved her was that he had some questions he wanted to ask her. Cindy Windy looked at him with disdain and questioned if that was the only reason he kept her alive. Vicar didn't answer the question and turned around and said that after investigating, he had discovered that the reason Baron Gambino, who was just an ordinary homosexual, was able to increase his power so quickly, and the reason was due to Cindy Windy's abilities to earn money. He added that if she had been able to grow her talent in a place other than an underworld family, she would have been able to become a great merchant or banker. Vicar then placed a chair in front of Cindy and sat down on it. He made her an offer, promising to let her go if she answered his questions but warning of consequences if she refused. Cindy bit her lips in anger but eventually agreed to answer if she could. Vicar looked at Cindy and asked about his performance as a law enforcer. Cindy responded with a mocking smile, saying that a reputable magistrate has graced the city with his presence. Vicar was not satisfied with her response and expressed his concern that he cannot uphold his promise if she doesn't take him seriously. Cindy sighed in annoyance and finally gave in, admitting that she thinks he was doing well. Vicar gazed at Cindy with a cold, calculating look in his eyes. Suddenly, his expression changed and a grin spread across his face. He rose from his chair and strode towards Cindy, grabbing her chin and bringing his face closer to hers. With a deep voice, he asked her why she thought he was doing well as a law enforcer. Cindy's face was covered in cold sweat as she looked at Vicar's red eyes. Vicar released her chin and walked towards a nearby chair. He turned to Cindy and asked her to speak her mind. Cindy gritted her teeth in anger and began to explain her perspective. She reminded Vicar that, as a consul, the concept of virtue had always been considered one of the most important factors. While Vicar's laws might take care of street criminals and raise his own dignity, they would ultimately result in the deaths and suffering of many citizens. In the long term, such laws would only fuel hatred and rage among the people. Cindy then looked directly at Vicar and warned him that the Baskervilles would not welcome him once he gained more power than the clan leader in Underdog City. Vicar concluded from Cindy's explanation that if he continued down this path, he would be hated by the people and become a target of the Baskervilles. He asked for Cindy's advice on what he should do next. Cindy replied that Vicar should return all his authority to the Baskerville clan, along with the glory of the events that happened here. She suggested that he give them to the clan leader. In order to avoid further attention, she advised him to go to either the La Rouge et La Noire mountain or the academy in the center of the empire. These were places where people of his age and status were common, allowing him to hide his powers and wash his identity. Cindy assured Vicar that when the time comes, the Baskerville clan leader would be the one who suffers in his stead. After hearing Cindy's advice, Vicar remained silent for a few moments. Suddenly, Cindy felt a surge of bloodlust, and she shuddered at the feeling. Vicar's voice broke the silence as he expressed his understanding of Cindy's suggestion, remarking that it was like asking a hunting dog to bite off its own owner's neck. He looked at Cindy with a great amount of bloodlust and killing intent, waiting for her response. However, Cindy did not show any fear. Instead, she looked at Vicar with a calm gaze and replied that it was the only way for him to avoid the Baskervilles' hatred. Vicar smiled faintly and said he would keep her advice in mind. He added that Cindy's ideas were almost identical to his. Then, Vicar surprised Cindy by opening her handcuffs and freeing her. Cindy asked him if he was really letting her go, to which Vicar replied that he always kept his promises. Cindy walked past Vicar and expressed her hope that he would never come to regret what had happened today. However, before she could leave, Vicar asked her if she knew of a clan called the Messimaginero. Vicar continued to narrate a story about the Messimaginero clan. He explained that there were more than just the well-known 7 clans among the founding clans of the Underdog City. The Messimaginero clan was a prosperous merchant clan and was the 8th clan. However, their prosperity came to an end due to an unfortunate event. During a birthday celebration, the youngest son of the Messimaginero clan showed off his newly learned sword skills, and the people of Baskerville couldn't believe what they saw. The sword technique that the young child had learned was none other than the secret Baskerville sword techniques, which only members of the family knew. The news soon reached the leader of the Baskerville clan, and they believed that top-secret military information had been leaked. The Baskerville clan released the hunting dogs, causing the Mesimaginero clan to go extinct. However, there was someone behind the scenes pulling the strings. The young demons of the 7 clans had stolen the sword techniques from the Baskerville clan and allowed the young child of the Mesimaginero clan to learn them. Cindy looked at Victor and forced a smile, asking what the story of the 8th clan had to do with her. Victor didn't answer her question and went on to reveal that there was actually a survivor from the Mesimaginero clan massacre. The girl was only 1 year old when she was taken from the devastation and subjected to cruel and unusual torture simply because she was beautiful. The acts they committed were too foul for even Victor to talk about. Cindy couldn't bear it and started to walk away with an angry expression, telling Victor she didn't want to hear his story anymore. But Victor continued, saying that there was more to the story. A new deputy consul was appointed to the city and he managed to bring the old problems to light, punishing the 7 idiots who committed the heinous crime. They were thoroughly tortured and made to admit their crimes before they met their end. In their last moments, they expressed remorse for their actions, and their last words were, "I'm sorry for committing such a heinous crime." Cindy turned back and tears streamed down her face. She asked Victor who the 7 young masters were apologizing. Victor looked at her calmly and replied that they should apologize to the young girl who had used the fake name Cindy Wendy Senrose and was the sole survivor of the Mesimaginero clan. With tears still flowing, Cindy asked Victor how she was supposed to believe him, given that he had taken them and tortured them. She questioned how she could trust that they had truly apologized. Victor picked up a fire torch and replied that the easiest way for her to believe him would be to see it with her own eyes. Victor took Cindy to the prison cell where the 7 young masters were held before their deaths, and urged her to take a look. Cindy's eyes widened with surprise as she saw that the prisoners had written an apology with their own blood on the floor. The apologies read, "We were the ones that drove the Mesimaginero clan to devastation. Forgive us for our crimes." They asked for forgiveness and were scared beyond imagination, pleading to be spared. Cindy's tears continued to flow as she looked at the apologies. She suddenly felt nauseous and started vomiting after seeing the gruesome scene. Victor walked towards her and said that even though they had all died painful deaths, the Mesimaginero clan's vengeance was not yet over. He informed her that there was still one more clan to deal with. Victor then urged Cindy to despise the Baskervilles and to remember that she had more than enough right to do so, being a member of the Mesimaginero clan. Cindy wiped her mouth and tears continued to stream down her face. She asked Victor why he was helping her, given that he was a part of the Baskerville clan. Victor looked at her with a smirk and replied that she was asking the wrong question. As Cindy got up and started to walk away, she stated that she understood what he was trying to say. She then turned back and addressed Victor by his full name, Victor Van Baskerville, and promised to repay this debt. As she walked away, she promised that no matter what he did with the rest of his life, she will ensure that he would never have to worry about money again. Victor watched her departing figure and after some time, he said that he would remember her promise.